In the following panel discussion, we'll be examining the trade-off between these two values. Hardly anything else has such a strong impact on the modern age. Just think of the current challenges of COVID-19 and how we're dealing with it. So how much freedom should everyone have, and how much security must the state give us as a society? This is just one question that we will ask ourselves in this discussion. Now, let me welcome further guests in addition to George Roos. My second guest is Carlos Martinez. Welcome, Carlos. Thank you so much for stepping in at last minute. The last minute, we had to come up with a panelist very quickly. Carlos Martinez is an architect of passion and represents Martinez Architects in Russia. Two projects that I really love are, first of all, the Red Square in St. Gallen and the Sofitel in Vienna. So welcome, Carlos. Thank you for joining us. Then I'd also like to give a warm welcome to Christoph Jansen. Christoph Jansen is co-owner of Jansen and member of the management of Jansen. I'm very pleased that you've been able to join us. And Christoph, I'd like to start off with you, and I have a question for you. Now, in this trade-off between security and freedom, I see entrepreneurship, particularly with regard to the willingness to take risks as an entrepreneur. Christoph, are you willing to take risks? Well, I think you have to be ready and willing to take risks if you want to be an entrepreneur, but it's also about fun and about enjoying, taking pleasure in risks. It's not a matter of being willing to run a risk, but having the courage to embrace change. And I think we have that in our company. I think we've proven that over the last few years in Jansen, because we have focused strongly on specific things. We've left the automobile age and focusing more on the requirements of the construction industry. Yes, of course you have to run risks. You have to be ready to take risks, but I think it's above all a matter of the courage to embrace change. Christopher, is it easier for a family-run company to make decisions, particularly in these uncertain times? Well, I am convinced that is the case. A family-run company has shorter decision-making periods. You don't have to explain to anonymous shareholders why you're going to make this decision. As a family-run company, you have also certain disadvantages, of course. You possibly have a smaller budget at your disposal. So I think we are not very big, but we compensate for the lack of size through agility and flexibility to make decisions. And I think I'm convinced that a family-run company is a very good, a very competitive form of business, model of business. Carlos, now you're an entrepreneur yourself as well, and you have to be very flexible in your job, particularly in your professional environment. It's a matter of thinking ahead, of long-term thinking. So how do you go about things? Flexibility is a long-standing topic. This goes back to the 70s, I remember. I remember every year there was a book published called The Zeit. You have to be flexible. And of course, we have the same problem in the field of architecture. We do real estate. You have to be mobile, so to say. You have to stay mobile. It's more difficult to be flexible in the field of real estate, but it's a challenge that we have to face every day. The new building materials that are used, the new modes of construction, make things easier for us, make it easier for us to be more flexible and to go with the times. and to be prepared for new times and the changes ahead. The problem is that we have to create functional spaces, so they have to be flexible to fulfill various purposes and applications. That's all very well, but it's important also to ensure that if they are multifunctional, that they can also serve specific purposes too, that they're not designed for specific purposes. We like to tailor our projects to our customers' requirements, so such a customized project is very difficult to customize something for opera and for rock concert, for example. You were nodding your head there, Christian. Would you like to add something? Well, I like that metaphor. We're talking about custom-made suits and tailored suits. There are specialized solutions that are designed for specific causes and specific purposes, and of course they're multifunctional. There are more multifunctional design. So it's very difficult to meet both these requirements. Now, Georges, you concern yourself with megatrends. They are also based on a long-term basis. So how do you deal with the in-between times? Well, first of all, I think I have two people I can agree with completely. I think a family-run company also has to need anticipative skills, and I think that is better embodied in the DNA of a family-run company, better than in a large-scale company that works on a quarterly basis. And as Carlos said, the buildings have to last decades, and I think that's also the reason why we have to anticipate what will work in 10, 20 or 30 years' time, perhaps even in 100 years' time. I live in a house that was built 100 years, so the megatrends are the overarching developments that take all the aspects into consideration, ubiquity, for example, that have a long-term perspective. These are the interpretations of various changes that could also have short-term phenomena, but it's a matter of understanding these change patterns. Megatrends do not suffice for us futurologists. We say that we have to recognize soft signals that have not yet been reflected in statistics, but we have to feel them. We have to get a feel for things that are about to change, but we will have not the certainty that these can really be relevant in the future. But I think it's important to try to recognize these soft signals, and then we can think ahead. We are prepared, for example. The future has already started. It's just not evenly distributed. That is a saying that we all know. What does that mean? Well, there are certain places where we can see that how things will develop in the future, and that is the task of early recognition, to have to be open-minded, to be open to things, to see things, to identify things, see, oh, this is new. Could this be something important for me? Is this a chance, an opportunity, or is it a risk? Thank you very much for those explanations. Christoph, so how do you recognize what the needs of your customers will be in the future, like the early recognition we just spoke of in terms of megatrends and developments? Yes, this is indeed a challenge, because when we speak to our customers and we ask them what they need, then they'll tell us about the products that we should have developed 2 years ago. Well, that's too late then, isn't it, for us? It's very demanding for us, demanding for our customers too, to look ahead to the future, to put ourselves into the future, to travel into the future. What could future requirements be? I think this is indeed the challenge for us all, and that places great demands on us. We hold intensive talks with our customers. We do it ourselves, or sometimes our sales reps do that for us. people who are in the markets on site. So that's how we try to jointly develop a vision and look at all the trends, developments that could have an impact on us that are relevant for our products, relevant for our customers, and things that might only have an indirect impact. But it is really a challenge to try to look ahead. Now, Carlos, how do you anticipate changes? Before, you said that we should try to create multifunctional, multidimensional buildings to be able to meet future requirements. So how do you decide as to what will be in demand in the future? I can't decide on that. The customers decide on that. The market decides on that. The world, the times decide on it. But what I often do, and I often warn my clients that I'm going to ask lots of questions. I'm going to be a nuisance. I'm going to annoy them with questions. I can ask them, what do you think will happen? What do you think will change? How do you foresee the future? For example, let me give you an easy, simple example. A single-family home that we build for a couple that haven't got children yet. So, will the father look ahead? Does the father want to have 4 children? Can we look ahead to build a house for 4 children, for example? So this is just an example. It's interesting, for example, to have a look at industry in this. Okay, so we have the innovation industry, innovation centre in Wielertsfield, for example. We work together with Burglar and with Burglar. And it was very interesting to create spaces, flexible spaces. Another topic is, where does innovation come about, and what will we need in the future to be able to generate innovation? This was a very exciting project to create innovative conglomerate of spaces that also inspires for further innovation. It's not easy. Not an easy job. Thank you, Carlos. George, another topic that fits in well with the industry, smart robotics, artificial intelligence. You spoke about that in your presentation. Now, digitalization has indeed had an impact on industry. When do you think industry will only be implemented by robots alone? I'm sorry, I didn't understand part of the question. The question is, will we be replaced? Will people be replaced by robots in industry? Well, you spoke about smart robotics, and yes. Yes, I think this is a great opportunity for the industry. We've already had the big problem of high income, and the next stage of automation will lead to reductions in salaries, for example. But we have examples, for example, of countries, companies transferring their fabrication, their manufacturing facilities back from Asia to Europe again, for example, because they've been able to cut down loans using robots. There are lots of things that we can list here that people can do better. For example, improvisation. If something doesn't work as you think it should work out, then people are quite good at improvising. We can act spontaneously. We're rather creative, and we learn things very quickly too. If a new problem crops up, we learn very quickly, even if we haven't seen this before. People are have the capacity to transfer know-how from one domain to another. I had a guest once, a researcher, Pascal Kaufmann, with me, and he said, "Look, Georges, if you have 2 mirrors on your of the ceiling, it's higher, for example. You probably haven't seen that before, but nevertheless, you'd probably be able to get those mirrors down from the ceiling. So we can transfer know-how. So let me say the following. Humans are in a position to create connections to other people. What does that mean in the field of production? If something goes wrong, if a pallet falls over, or you have a broken water pipe, then everyone comes together and helps each other out. This is social behavior. And I think this is something where we are superior to machines and to robots. And I think we will be superior to robots in this field for a long period of time. So we'll have plenty of work to do. But I do see a greater opportunity for the industrial location of Switzerland through robotics. Carlos, in the field of architecture, now where do you use smart robotics? Do you think there won't be any need for architects anymore because the robots will become so creative? Well, I hope not. I hope not, but I don't think that will be the case either. As George said before, these creative processes that we humans are able to do, and these creative processes happen very often with Christoph, for example, when Christoph has to run the business. He has to be creative in running the business. The very solutions that he has to weigh up and decide, and artificial intelligence cannot come up with these creative solutions. They're not able to. Robots are not able to generate these creative ideas. So lots of things will not be able to be done by robots. But another thing is that artificial intelligence will help us do our jobs. About 5 years ago, we started playing around with a 3D printer. In the meanwhile, we have now 3 3D printers, and we print out creative things that we'd like to play about with and try out with. So it's not artificial intelligence yet, but I think it will be more faceted. I think cooperation with AI will be more faceted, and I can imagine more connections, more interconnectivity. For example, when you use Google to surf for things, and you're surfing for a ping pong table, and after a week or so, Google shows you adverts of ping pong tables, for example. That's how artificial intelligence learns with you, and so it could well be the case that a CAD system notices what you want to create, perhaps say a round window, and will take over for you. The next step would be the CAD system says, no, you can't do another round window, Carlos, you need to do something else. So I think you see that I do have a great deal of respect towards AI, and what Georges said before, I'm a bit concerned about what he said in Switzerland, for example. If we compare ourselves to other countries, in Switzerland, there is no room for workforce that are not qualified. People are not qualified, and this is a worry of mine of what do we do with people who are not highly qualified, people perhaps who are older, who cannot keep up with this automated world, keep pace with this high-tech world. What do we do with these people? There is no room for them anymore. But that's another topic, of course. I'm sorry, I've drifted off the topic. Oh, well, let me say something in the field of construction here. There's an interesting prototype, a timber construction robots, intelligent timber construction robots. So they develop the drawings and they cut the timber, and they put it together. But they probably. But to deal with the liability side of things, the screw fixings are done by people. I think it will have an influence on architecture. You can enter topographical data, spatial data, and then artificial intelligence will probably be able to print out a plan, a drawing of some kind. That could help Carlos. And Carlos could then say, no, I think I'd like to design this in a different way. So there'll be a shift in terms of the architect's job. So the architect will possibly become the coach of the client. Georges, you don't want me to sleep tonight. Is that what? These are terrible scenarios that you're coming up with here. Do you think that if we enter the same data, then this will lead to identical designs? There will be all identical projects if the data are always entered by AI. So that's another different discussion. And we still need design. We still need creativity. Christoph, smart robotics has been a topic for a long while in the field of technological companies. I think Jansen used its first robot about 10 years ago. That is for palletizing, picking and palletizing pipes. So how do you decide in terms of what should we automate next? Where should the next automation take place? Well, Georges has already shown this to us. I think we're looking towards automated factories, and as entrepreneur, we have to see what path we need to take to reach that destination. I think the exciting thing is how we're going to shape this path. You can choose different paths. It could be a path of automation, digitalization. And what we have to do is look at the jobs that employees find tedious and what jobs are exciting. So the tedious jobs should be automated first. So I think that would mean that then we would all have more time for exciting tasks. I don't think it will stop at the boundaries of factories. I think there'll be more interconnectivity with clients and customers as far as raw materials concerned, steel strip, finished doors, reuse of these doors in different applications. These will all be integrated, value-added chains, be a single process that involves all these aspects. The idea is to see how this vision is implemented step by step. Christoph, how can you ensure that you can take your team with you along this path? Well, the question is not whether I take the team with me, whether the team takes me with me. I think it's both. I think we have to work together. I think the prerequisite is that we are allowed to think new things, that we have to think new things, that we hold an open dialogue, that there are no taboos. And I think that there'll be good ideas from management, good ideas from clients, good ideas from employees, from everyone. Thank you. Carlos, how do you deal with such changes? How do you discover new topics? Has Martinez Architects got an innovation lab? Do you come across new ideas when you speak to customers? Do your clients have new ideas? Well, it all happens within the team. I think you have to go with the team has to go with you. You have to work together, pull together. And it happens in the form of dialogue, in the form of conversations. I don't think there's somewhere you can go to get these ideas. One thing is certain, it's very important to listen to your clients, listen to your customers, what do they need, and that you look around, you look at the changes happening in society. Ideas for the future. Well, I think ideas are there. Around you. Yes, as I said before, I said the future has already begun. It's just unevenly distributed. It's in the air. You're right. It's got a lot to do with the culture of an organization, whether you've got an open corporate culture, if you're open to change, if you're curious. Curiosity is very decisive for human beings, but it's also decisive for organizations that they want to learn new things. In addition, it depends on how exposed you are. It depends on the sector, on the organization, but of course it is a good idea to work on a systematic basis, that you learn on the basis of the past, of what you have learned in the past, that you You might ask yourself, how did I find this new product? But it helps, for example, that you have the DNA in your organs, that your DNA is future-oriented. Of course, you can't ask the customers, what do you want to have in 2 or 3 years' time, because human beings find it difficult to envision what is not yet the case. 10 years ago, nobody would have said they want a smartphone with a touchscreen, but since it's been in place, everyone uses it. But now that you're thinking about, we've got mobile phone, well, why should we use the keys? Let's have a touchscreen. So nobody thought that that would be a requirement 10 years ago. So I think it would not suffice to just do statistical analyses. That will not show what the future holds. You need a team that is open, that discusses things, that has no thought barriers, and can think about what could this mean to us, and let's go into greater depth in this context. Georges, from my viewpoint, I think you're talking about something that we're familiar with from Silicon Valley. It's to do with error culture, the culture of being able to make errors and mistakes. Why do you think that not everyone is willing to to embrace this culture of error culture? Well, let's go back to the topic of security. In our latitudes, in Europe, I think security is more important to us than, for example, to Americans or to Asians. Security, safety is, if you don't have the, we want to feel safe, we want to feel secure. Life is risky. Setting up a new company with innovative ideas is risky, and if you attach too much importance to safety, then it's probably difficult to make new departures. Now, an error culture is a part of this culture of ours. Having the right mindset, being curious, I think that plays an important role here. Thank you, Georges. Now, if we go back a little bit to the topic of security, as Georges said, you said that perception of security has changed through demographics. You spoke about it in your presentation, Carlos. This new perception of security, what impact does that have on architecture and the planning of buildings? You're talking about COVID, are you? The pandemic? Yeah, it can be the pandemic, which will naturally have consequences, have an effect on architecture. How can the pandemic, what impact will the pandemic have, for example, on architecture and building? Well, all fields are changing, all sectors are changing. They go with the times. There's nothing that stays the same. Everything changes. There's nothing more constant than change. I think that's the saying or something like that. The only thing that's constant is change. I think that's what we can say. So everything is changing all the time. The pandemic has shown us that there is a stronger feeling of security in terms of ventilation, hygiene, and space. People need more space today than they did a year ago. They feel more cramped today than they felt before. Previously, you felt good in a crowded disco, and this will have is having an impact on architecture, on space requirements, and also on design. This concept of security is always prevalent. It is a shaping factor. We have noticed there are certain fears that people now deal with, fear of migration, of what is to come, and this security of buildings is also very strong today. Now, Jansen is predestined to meet these requirements, this new trend, to meet this security trend in terms of security of buildings, the safety of buildings. I think it's becoming more and more important. I don't know if I've answered your question. Yes, you have answered the question. Thank you, Carlos. Gentlemen, well, our time is up. Almost up. I'd like to go into one final round and just put one question to each of you. Now, Georges, what idea will you take with you from this panel discussion, from this event? What idea? One idea. Well, we focused on security through the telescope. Pandemic is a good example of the perception of security or the feeling of security that we need today. I think security is always an issue. But we have to make sure that we don't want absolute security. Absolute security means that you're dead, or alive and dead, dead and alive. We have to understand that you have to also be willing to run certain risks. You can't secure everything. You can't have absolute 100% security. Carlos, what are you going to take home with you from this panel discussion? I think it's a very exciting topic in terms of important. I think Georges' topic, forecasting the future, futurology, is very important. Is it very exciting? Now, thinking back 30 years ago when I read the books of Fred Popcorn, as a trend researcher, I think that was the start of trend research. We didn't even know what trend research was at the time, 30 years ago. And books were published every 10 years. Ms. Popcorn analysed, what did I say 10 years ago? What was it 10 years' time? What will I say in 10 years? In 10 years' time, 10 years is nothing today. Requirements have become greater, become more intensive. Demands made on an entrepreneur have grown as well. Another important thing is that it is exciting and will always be exciting. I think we have to live with these dynamics. We have to look in front of us and behind us and to the left and to the right. I think these are exciting times, and I look forward to the secure future. Thank you, Carlos. Christoph, are you going to take anything with you for Jansen in particular? Well, I'm just thinking, if we had held such an event 2 years ago, would we have held such an event 2 years ago? No, we wouldn't. And if we had, then would you have all taken part? And the answer is probably no, you wouldn't have taken part if we'd held an event like this 2 years ago. Then I asked myself, do we need such a situation to trigger an event of this kind? And I think this event has illuminated how positive change can be and how good it is to be willing to embrace change and make new departures. This is what I have learned today, that not to wait for a situation like the COVID-19 situation to trigger something, but to take the initiative ourselves. Thank you, gentlemen, for this very exciting panel discussion. Christoph, thank you very much for enabling this event. And I, too, will also take a lot home with me, lots of ideas home with. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
So now for the last